It's a fascinating thing to see the convergence of architectures for AGI. That is something I think that is new in the last few years. I think it signals kind of a sea change in our endeavor. We still have a long way to go, but you know, when I was sitting there reading the papers, and some of these I hadn't seen before, and some of them I knew about, like LIDA, I was sitting there going like, oh cool, they do that too now. You know, from the stuff I did with Joshua Blue, and it's like, oh wow, you did the same thing. And like the first presenter this morning said, yeah, that's right. And when we all start seeing that, then we know we're onto something. Either we're commonly deluded, and we'll have a wonderful time, we'll have 10 years of conferences, and we'll all have fun, or we're actually on to solving the goal. And I think it's an exciting time for us. So to start off, we are going to try, I'm trying not to use 10 minutes, because I'm not supposed to. We're going to try to keep this tight, because I think the discussion is by far the more valuable part of our all being here in this place. Our first speaker is Ronald Arkin. He's going to talk about governing lethal behavior and embedding ethics in deliberative reactive robot architectures.
The perfect topic for after lunch, governing lethal behavior. Notice, because of the time constraints, I did completely away with part one as well, too. I figured I'd start with part two. Actually, no, part one will be delivered in 2 weeks at Human-Robot Interaction Conference, and part three has already been delivered at the Technology in Warfare Conference at Stanford, so I've been going backwards in time. But the part is, if you really want to understand this, you're not going to get it from this talk, because I don't have enough time to do it. There is a 120-page technical report available on our website which embodies this. So I will basically be able to tell you a little bit of the why, a little bit of the what, and almost nothing of the how in terms of what I'm accomplishing here under this project, which is funded by the Army Research Organization. And it has gotten a lot of traction in the press of late for either good or bad reasons. One of the things you guys need to be aware of is that autonomous systems are working their way out towards the battlefield. There are a number of already fielded systems, or potentially very short-term fielded systems, which are going to have impact in the real world very soon. There is a South Korean robotic platform which has been designed by Samsung Techwin. I don't know who does your HD TV or whatever it is. But they have a system which is capable of autonomously identifying and engaging targets, deployable in the demilitarized zone in Korea. Your favorite home vacuum cleaner, Roomba, also makes the PackBot, which has been equipped with tasers. Non-lethal weapons, by the way, are just less lethal weapons. There's no such thing as a non-lethal weapon. And they also, I believe, have a weaponized version. The Swords by Foster Miller is already in Afghanistan and Iraq. It hasn't fired a shot yet, to my knowledge, but it is a fully equipped machine gun, a grenade launching robot, and so on. Other nations as well too. Israel, the MQ-9 Reaper, appropriately named, carries 10 times the ordnance of the Predator A, which you've already seen in action. And this is going on. I'm amazed by the number of systems that are rolling out on a continuous basis. So the real question, again, this is part of the quick why, is that these systems, I firmly believe, are ultimately going to sneak their way up in terms of autonomy in their ability to use and designate targets. There's a whole bunch of reasons for this, which have to do with battlefield tempo and the like. Read the papers. I don't have time to tell you about it. But there's many systems already. Even anti-tank mines or anti-personnel mines can be considered at some level an autonomous robot, because they sense and they actuate in the perhaps not a particularly desirable way. I've spent 25 years dealing with the military in autonomous systems, and we've come a long way, for better or for worse, in terms of the ability to field these systems quite relatively soon. But the argument is the human in the loop? The Air Force, some people always say there will be a human in the loop. I'm not exactly sure what that means, and this autonomy is sneaking up gradually, even according to the military charts. The Air Force has used the phrase human on the loop, which was an interesting catchphrase. So what does that mean? If we're in and on, and well, what's next? The human's out of the loop to some extent. And even in some cases, the cognitive abilities of humans to be able to process when that light comes on, should I fire or not? Should I fire or not? As evidenced, for example, by the Patriot missile batteries in the Kuwaiti engagement that we had many years ago, which there had. Anecdotally, there was never a case where someone did not push the button when it came on. There's just not enough time to think about it from a cognitive perspective. So it appears for all practical purposes, that this is going to happen. So the underlying thesis of this work is that not only can we potentially use these systems in the battlefield, we have to examine how we're going to use them, and it is my contention that ultimately we can do better than human beings in the battlefield. And I will try and convince you, like this much, one slide, that it's a very low bar for humans to be able to exceed. And that's quite unfortunate, to be honest with you, in this set of circumstances. Also, I make no claims that these systems will be perfectly ethical in the battlefield. My claim is that they will perform more ethically than humans currently do. That's the benchmark that we're doing. And in so doing, we will be able to save non-combatant lives, among others as well, too, hopefully without eroding mission effectiveness. This is an amazing report. It's online, you can find it. It was the first ethical report done by the Surgeon General in the history of the military. It was published in 2005 from returning soldiers from Operation Iraqi Freedom. And it examined and created a benchmark for the ethical performance of our soldiers. Some of the stuff, I know you might have a hard time reading it, but it says 45% of soldiers and 60% of Marines did not agree that they would report a fellow soldier, Marine, if he had injured or killed an innocent non-combatant. They're not going to ask the question, did you kill or injure an innocent non-combatant? But this is the sort of thing, and it goes on and on. Just reading the summary session, which this is reproduced from, is actually very disheartening. I have great respect for our colleagues in uniform as well, too, and they're doing the best that they can, many of them. But I used to think that these violations were just an isolated point. They are not. These violations seem to be endemic, due, especially in my mind, to the ever-increasing tempo of warfare. And as such, something needs to be done to enhance the ways in which we can conduct warfare. If we're stupid enough to go and continue to kill ourselves in the battlefield, we should do it ethically. And the important thing is, it's true. I'm sorry, we've spent hundreds of years, and I don't have the time to talk about this, engaging from St. Augustine on in just war theory, jus ad bello and jus ad bellum, in the ways in which we are allowed to kill each other. I had lectures at one of the first workshops in roboethics. Now, I need 30 seconds more for this. To be told the right caliber of bullet to shoot somebody with. You shoot them with big, fat, slow bullets and not high-speed, small bullets. And the reason for that is to reduce unnecessary suffering in humanity. There's all sorts of things that you probably don't really want to know about. But if you do, you read the technical report. And so there's a variety of reasons why I would like to see our systems using this. And again, I'm rushing through this, so forgive me. This talk is usually an hour. Their ability to act conservatively. There is no inherent right of self-defense for an autonomous system in the battlefield. They can do things in a way which could be potentially self-sacrificing. And they may work in pairs, for example, to disambiguate. Sometimes the issue of cost comes up in that, but you can bypass that to some extent by recognizing that even intelligent hand grenades, which could have been rolled potentially through the doors in Haditha, might be able to reserve the decision until additional information had arrived. A bunch of other things as well, too. The lack of emotion. Although I've worked extensively in the building of emotions into these robotic systems for Sony, as well as other applications, including the military, interestingly enough. The question is the appropriate use of those emotional baggage. And the issue is we would like to use guilt and remorse, oddly enough, as an adaptive effective function in the case that violations of the military conventions arise. And again, with the advent of network-centric warfare, did you know about network-centric warfare? The coming of the global information grid and the like as well too. All these new technologies are going to be able to deliver far more information than any person could possibly assimilate in a reasonable amount of time, but it's my contention that a robot potentially could. And also the third-party view where their mere presence of being able to observe in the battlefield the performance not only of themselves but of others as well too, monitoring for ethical infractions will have a very interesting effect, perhaps on squad cohesion, perhaps on the aspects of the ways in which tactics are conducted, and a variety of other things as well too. Okay, there's lots of arguments from philosophers and others who think, from the worst case, it just can't be done, and the like as well too. But this is the goal. Again, to incorporate the rules of engagement. It is not appropriate, in my estimation, for a robot to independently develop its own moral sense of agency in the battlefield. You don't do a soldier, hand him a gun, and go out there and say, try and figure it out, and do what you think is best. These laws have been appropriately encoded over, like I said, since about 1836 or something like that, and the rules of engagement are developed by lawyers. How can we encode those appropriately to do that? These are the techniques that we would like to use, making sure that we have obligation to kill. And this deals with deontic logic and other formalisms as well too, which can be put to effect. A specific extension, I can't talk about double effect, but double intention, ensures that minimization of collateral damage, including civilian property and civilian lives, is used. And new tactics, again, to use escalating force, so that you don't necessarily shoot first and ask questions later. Indeed, the underlying principle, strangely enough, is to first do no harm under these sets of circumstances, and assume that the system is dealing with non-combatants until it reaches a certain threshold of confidence. These are the underlying principles of just war. There's actually pseudocode and algorithms in that tech report for being able to do this. We are building the system as we speak, and the four mechanisms by which we're doing it. One is called an ethical governor. The ethical governor deals with the encoding, and it throttles basically the overt behavior of the system using formalisms that were described in my textbook a number of years ago, to transform that into a form which yields at the very least permissible behavior, recognizing the use of obligations and the avoidance of violating prohibitions. To do that, ethical behavioral control deals specifically with the underlying mechanism for designing these systems. The ethical adapter, as I mentioned before, these systems will not be perfect. The question is, how do they automatically recognize when something has gone wrong, either through after-action review or through the use of affect when they are in real time in the battlefield. And the responsibility advisor, which is a crucial aspect for justification of potential deleterious actions, I guess is the best way to put it. This is very, very important as well too. And to me, now you guys at AGI may argue that the robot should be given its own moral agency, can be given its own moral agency, and you can blame the robot. Well, I'm not at that point yet. It's going to take a lot of convincing to get to that particular point. And I have given this talk with the philosophers and the like as well too, and I will be again later this summer as well. This is the overall, there's the hybrid deliberative architecture. Those are the four different components. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. I can't talk about the formalisms that are used here, although that's what this paper contains, so please review that if you like. But you might want to read part one, which is available on the internet first before you do that. We are planning on testing this in 4 different scenarios, based on real-world situations in some cases. The first one deals with 190 Taliban, which were in a cemetery. The second one deals with a violation of the Geneva Convention, in my estimation, of an Apache helicopter video. Third one deals with these are fire, those are not fire, basically. And the fourth one deals with some work which we can ultimately field at Fort Benning. So the bottom line for this is that we need to, as a community, this goes for the AI folks as well too, but I often say this just to the roboticists, recognize our responsibility in managing the technology. You're creating an AGI, okay? Some of you think, yay! Some of you might have a secondary thought about that as well too. So if you're creating it, we need to understand it, we need to be able to manage it in effective ways, and there's also a survey of public opinion on that. And in conclusion, there's more information.